Jaciel, welcome to the podcast.
Welcome. And welcome back, everyone, to the Journey podcast. Thank you for joining us on this lovely, whatever time of day it is when you're watching this.
That was smooth. That was very smooth. Thank you that one. Man, Jaciel, thank you for coming on. It's a pleasure for you to actually come on the podcast. I've honestly been so excited to have this conversation with you.
They're going to say it's an honor for you to be here. And
I mean, it is an honor for you to be here. No, I honestly wanted... So you're a lot of behind the scenes kind of guy, and I really wanted to get you on camera talking about your organization, because I think you're making such an impact in the Houston community, and you don't get the credit. And I appreciate that because, you know what I'm saying, you're behind the scenes, but at the same time, people need to know exactly what you're doing, and I want to be a platform for you to share that story.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's just we tend to model what we see. And a lot of the great people that I've seen do some amazing things, they weren't doing it for the credit. And so I want to make sure that when we do work in the community, that the people that do the work get the credit, which is, we're here to uplift and work for awesome, amazing people. And I saw my parents do that a lot, just model that humility to, put others, give the credit where the credit's due. And so,
Amen to that.
But
yeah.
So Community Preschools, which is your baby, right? Your organization that you've seen.
I have 5 babies. My 6th baby. And
that's true. Tell us a little bit about what is the driving mission? In one sentence, what is the driving mission of Community Preschools?
That's hard.
Well, that's hard.
That's what I'm saying. That's hard. It's such a big...
It is.
Yeah.
It's a huge organization that does so much with anything to do with early childhood education, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, essentially we're seeking to bridge the gap between the folks that need support from taking care of their kids, trusting them with people that are going to love them, care for them, but also that it doesn't cause a burden for the family, that it becomes an easy decision to make for families. And so providing free, high-quality early education at the time that matters most in Houston's most underserved communities. And we're in year 5 of working here in Houston, and it's been amazing. It's been the response that we've gotten from parents and families, and so that was more than one sentence, but
it was still relatively concise for such a huge organization. What I think is really cool about Community Preschools when we got to know you and the organization is just how much, just what a powerhouse your organization is. I've felt that a lot of organizations or pieces in education, you're doing one part and you're honed in really well. Somehow you all are very, very good at lots of different parts and also are not exclusive. You are working with other schools, right? Because you are this grant powerhouse. You know how to work the bureaucracy in order to push through the red tape to get the resources that the community needs, right? And you're not just keeping that in-house. You're saying, if other school systems, if, nonprofits, educational nonprofits need that resource, what can we do to help?
Yeah. It's just such a crisis, right? The fact that there is hundreds of millions and not billions of dollars of government dollars that go unused every single year because families can't access them. It's just so difficult to work with government agencies. They are not built to support the people they serve. And so for us, it was a moment of desperation to say we've got, in our community, over 26,000 kids that are eligible to go to preschool, but don't. They're sitting at home with a tablet in front of them, eating Cheetos and Pop-Tarts and wherever they can because parents need to work. Yeah. And yet there's all this funding that's not being used. There's such an urgency around putting kids in great schools. You need both great schools and funding to make that work. And so that was where it was a moment of crisis. I have 5 kids myself and have gone, I feel like I'm always in crisis as a young parent. You don't know what to do when it comes to getting your kids a great education, especially if you didn't grow up with somebody modeling that for you. And so we're just beyond excited to be able to dedicate the next 40 years of our life to this. My wife and I, she's my boss. She's
She's fabulous, by the way.
She's amazing.
Can confirm.
Yeah, it's amazing. And
let's talk about your history, right? So how did you get on this path of education, right? Because I know you're an engineer, and my brain can't correlate like you're an engineer and
Yeah, it
you're
makes no
actually,
sense.
Yeah, exactly. Like,
Don't ask me for my resume because it makes no sense.
Can you walk us through like how you actually got on this path of entrepreneurship and actually started really making the impact you're making today?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so many of you may remember there was a major earthquake in Mexico back in '85, and about a third of the city was just completely flattened. And big city, people there was no way for them to go. It's a valley, and so my parents moved out into a different part of the country, and set up a shack, literally with pallets, where I was born, in the side of a hill, and at the bottom of the hill there was a prison where there was a lot of children that were living outside of the prison, women that were living there, husbands were inside of the prison. And so my parents, from when they arrived to Morelia, they started ministering or serving these kids with a soup kitchen. My mom would go over on the weekends and bring toys and talk to the kids and talk to moms. And out of that camp that they had, they built a small program to serve these kids over the weekends that became an orphanage for kids that needed a place to sleep. And it was never a job. It was always a calling for my parents to serve those kids and those. So I grew up with 40 brothers and sisters in my house, and it was 43 of us. My mom educated them. My dad figured out how to get food, how to get everything to serve these 43 kids, including the three of us. And so to see them do so much with nothing, which never had a salary. My dad barely finished middle school. For them to do so much with so little was so inspiring that, as I mentioned earlier, you do what you see. And the example that they were for us in putting their life down for children that had nobody in the world. Girls that were, only option was prostitution because they were living in the street. And for my mom to rescue them and say, no, like that is not the only path. You're worthy and you are so valuable. And for them to invest in their lives, the earlier that they got to the children, the better outcomes those children had. My mom still stays in touch with a lot of them that now live in California, they live in Mexico. So cool. And so my mom started a school. They started something that was incredibly meaningful for the lives of many for
and
those 10 years.
And you've got to see how so early, if you're able to give an opportunity to someone, how their entire life can change.
Exactly. And so that moment when I was 5, because we all had to work, we all had to contribute. When I was 5, I remember seeing my parents' devotion. I was like, I want to do that for the rest of my life. God. I want to be able to dedicate my life to serve kids that don't have somebody investing in them, don't have somebody to give them a place to live. And so that's where the mission was born before you were born, back in 92, 93. And so just to see it come to life, thank God, truly has been orchestrating every piece of the puzzle and to what Community Preschools is today to bridge that gap.
I think we forgot a little section in engineering. Why did you get the engineering degree? Something that you're passionate about?
Yeah, there's it's how our brains are wired, I think. My uncle was an engineer. He lived here in Houston, and he worked in building facilities and refineries. And so I saw how he was able to deconstruct these massive, massive projects and make them actionable, right? Make them bite-sized pieces. And so engineering is you take a really big project and you deconstruct it so that you can see if it's buildable, if it's realizable. And I wanted to learn how to build schools. I wanted to know all of the mechanics of building a building that housed 1,000, 2,000, 3,000, 30,000 people. That was a livable facility. That was a place for people to build community, to get an education, for childcare, I envisioned this these big community centers. And so that's why I chose engineering. I wasn't very good at it, to be honest, because I'm a people person, and it was really difficult. It took me 5.5 years to finish college, but I stuck it out, and it's been a formative experience in being able to now take a monumental project of how do we provide an early education to 500,000 kids in Texas, to take it one piece at a time.
I think it's the same way. You're building system operations to scale the school system. Like you're building a a facility. So I think it's very relatable.
Yeah. It's very multidisciplinary. So to build a school, you have to understand how air flows and how people move and how people get out of a building in a certain amount of time, and the type of lighting that needs to be facing what side of the, where, depending on where the sun rises and it sets. All of those factors play a major role in the life of a building. And so it was really fascinating to work with architects. I built 2 campuses in San Antonio, one 50,000 square feet of repurposed Kmart, and one in downtown for 165,000 square feet. And to see it come to life out of a dumpster, they were both dumpsters. They were landfills, to now create a school where it was a community center. It was beautiful. And so
I think it's really cool that part of your model is actually repurposing when possible, repurposing facilities in neighborhoods. If you notice, all over Houston, there's this mixed development. So you could have this brand new development right next to something that's falling apart. And it's kind of an interesting experience for me to see. And obviously in communities that don't have the resources, there are these buildings that go unused. And then if they go unused for long enough, and it just brings down the value, like the housing values, and it can lead to crime and safety. And so one of the things that you do is you figure out we need to be in the neighborhoods, right? We need to be as close as possible to the families. So let's use spaces that are already there and let's make them livable. So I think it's cool that you have that background, that you can do that. And we've been actually to a couple of the schools and seen how you're using those multi-purpose spaces. And I also feel like, I could be wrong here, but there's this sense of familiarity when it's not something that's totally brand new. It's like, okay, we've seen this space before. It's been here. It's been present in the community. Feels like less of a leap. Okay, we're not taking our child out of this community. We're keeping it where we need to be.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's human nature to be connected to the land. I mean, I think just a trait that we all human beings were just built with. And so if you set up a program or you have an initiative within a space that feels like home, then it makes sense to take your child there. For that to be not just, I mean, I don't know about you, but when I drive by the middle school where I went to, my kids go, that's Daddy's big school. And they say that every morning. We go by the same building, the same middle school every single day. And to them, it's a sense of pride to say, that's where Daddy went to school. Because I live 3 minutes away from the middle school I went to. And so I think by utilizing these spaces where people feel connected to, and now you bring a sense of purpose to those spaces. We're now launching ESO classes and GED classes at the preschools or next in the buildings adjacent to. And it's easy for parents to say, oh yeah, I'll drop off my baby and then I'll go to class, or then I'll stay to support the pantry so I can help provide food for others. And so that sense of community, when you have multiple purposes in those facilities, it becomes organic for people to want to do life and spend more time in those areas.
I am so passionate about third spaces, about having places where you can just bump into people, you can strike up conversation, you can do activities together that are not work, that's not at home, that doesn't cost you money, because I feel like so much in today's society outside of work or home costs money to enjoy and to do. And so that I think it's so cool that your mission doesn't just stop at the children. You're like, how can we also support the parents?
Yeah, I mean, I'd say for most of us, the biggest expense is our time, right? We don't have the time to go across town to go to a food pantry or to go to another place to go to school. Time is our biggest limiting factor. And so if we can think about how to bring all of these essential services into the same, call it a resource hub or resource center, then it's natural for us to ask for people to participate. And then when they receive and they've been blessed by taking class and getting their GED, then they ask, how can I help? How can I mentor? How can I, if somebody's new to the country, how can I help with that introduction to the community resources that they'll need? It's part of what they've received. And so it's natural for them to want to reinvest.
Such a grassroots approach.
Yeah. Let's talk about the messaging. How do you actually package that to a concise message that you can share to the community so they can understand what all you're providing for the community? Because like you said, you got the preschool, the pantries, now you're doing GED programs. How is that messaging coming across?
So I love the cap you guys just gave me that said, what's your story? And I think the biggest, when you meet new people, the best conversation is to ask good questions. And so I think that's part of our approach, is asking good questions of our families to say, how long have you been in this community, or what sort of things are needed so that you are able to meet your dreams and accomplish your goals. And so all of our decisions about the programming that we have are based on what we hear from families. And the goal is not to fill programs. It's not to fill the classrooms or to, brag about how many kids we have enrolled. That's not the point. The point is the service valuable to the people that we're committed to serve for the next 26 years?
This is really bringing me back. So I had this, brief history in the nonprofit space, NGO. I thought that I was going to be doing policy and, working with nonprofits for a long time. And so I had these experiences in a lot of different nonprofits. And the ones that were the most successful were the ones that were actually a part of the community that they were serving, as opposed to the top-down, really flashy, hey, we're not from here, we're going to come in and help you. And the best intentions, I have been on that side of things, where you have the best intentions, you want to help, but if you genuinely don't integrate yourself into the community that you're trying to serve, there's no way that you're going to understand what their real needs are. And not everyone is going to just open up to you right away. You have to build that trust.
Correct.
So something I really like is that you are so ingrained in the entire community, building those communities in multiple different neighborhoods in Houston, and knowing that looks different.
Yeah, I mean, it's learning how to listen and being able to take a responsibility. Because I think as folks that have been blessed by the investment of others, it is our responsibility when we hear a need, not just to say, great, let me find you a phone number, 211 to call, but to do something about it. And our community, we say that they're deserts of whatever, food deserts, shelter deserts, whatever. And it's, from a data perspective, it's right. But they're so resource rich when you look at the capabilities of what the community, when it comes together to support each other, it is such a resource rich community, but it takes relationship. It takes investing in being humble. I live in the Pasadena community, and I ask for help from my neighbors and from my parents whenever I have needs with my own children. And I have one of my children that doesn't speak yet. He has got a speech delay, and I don't know what to do. And so I need to rely on people that have gone through that before, even though I'm in education. And I think that learning how to receive is difficult in our culture.
Okay.
It's like, isn't there a saying that says it takes a village to raise a child?
Yes.
It really does.
And it really does. I saw this thing on TikTok. And it just so you know, I get a lot of my news on TikTok. No, but it was so interesting. It was the good neighbor idea. So back 20, 30 years ago, okay, you're making, the thing is like you're making bread and you realize you don't have butter. What do? You go next door. Hey, can I have some butter, right? And now people don't do that. They don't know their neighbors. They feel much more comfortable. Okay, I will go out and I'll get it myself. I don't want to bother people. Yep. And the thing is, it led me to reading this fascinating article on community and how if you are not willing to ask, okay, you're not opening up that vulnerability, because I think a lot of times people want to know that you can be willing to ask for something, and then people are so willing to give.
Exactly.
But they're not just going to give without the ask. And it can be so scary to put yourself in that position where they could say no, but actually what you're doing is you're giving them an opportunity to show how they can love and support you as a community member. And so by you being willing to ask for help, I think that's giving people an opportunity to support and uplift.
I think that's so we all have a childhood, right? And my childhood, I grew up in the church. My dad's a pastor and my parents are pastors. So I was always involved in the activities. I grew up as a musician, and but my favorite department of the church was missionaries, right? The mission work. Yeah. But I never got into going out to different countries. Like my sister, she goes to Colombia, she goes to all these places and does missionary work. I was always fascinated with the community work. My dad used to have this program. You buy an orange, and for every seed inside the orange, you had to give a donation of X amount of dollars to X amount of cost. And I remember when I was like maybe 10, 11 years old, I volunteered to literally pick up all the seeds and then go to the pantry with my dad, buy all the food, and then personally give out the food to the community. We also used to do that in Christmas time. And we used to give presents to the hospitals and with the kids and cancers. I think the aspect of that community work really kind of ingrains people, right? And it creates connects in a different level, right? Because at that point, it's like, it doesn't matter like the social class. It doesn't matter what position you're in life. You're just talking to another human being
Yeah.
I think through like when I grew up, even my early 20s, I still participated in all events. Like we did a massive blood drive, and we literally saw hundreds of people come out and donate blood. And at the same time, we saw hundreds of people enjoying the free food, getting picking up clothes, and it's crazy like how the evolution of time as we grew up. I'm kind of like getting my soap opera, but the impact that really kind of leaves on the legacy, it's powerful. And then the ability that an organization like yours is constantly trying to move that in a sense, hey, we're here to help and kind of bridge those gaps is amazing.
No, I mean, and you make an excellent point in the international community. You know, Houston is a city where the world is in a city. We're incredibly diverse. And when I drop off my kids in Morocco for a few weeks, they're like, aren't you scared that is it unsafe? I'm like, no. Like, Middle East and in most countries, they're so hospitable. They're the best person to talk to and welcome into your house is the stranger. Like that is a virtue of most cultures, and the children are sacred. And so the way they protect the children, the way they feed them and love on them, it is unlike anything you'll see, and you definitely won't see it here. And so I do think it's an opportunity, as you know, being vulnerable, going to the neighbor, knocking on the door, being willing to receive help, not just give, because I think giving is important, but it's not the primary thing. I think we have to meet each other in our weaknesses so that together we can become strong, is that sense of community. And it has to be intentional.
I think in Puerto Rico, like, I don't know if it's like in Mexico, but in Puerto Rico, like the little neighborhood is your family. Like your grandma lives there, your aunt's there, your cousin lives there. Yeah. And you kind of grew up and like, you know everybody.
Yeah.
So I think that, I wonder, like, I don't know, I wish we can recreate that here in America because we're so spread out, but essentially you're building your own community.
So I'm from Kentucky, and in especially in rural Kentucky or in Appalachia, you see that a lot in the hollers where you have family compounds essentially because it's you know, small, tight-knit rural communities, and that's like where my parents and my grandparents are from. And you'll have on, you know, one of my best friends growing up that I met, she lived in, I don't know if you've heard of the Dukes of Hazzard, that, you know, stereotypical American movie. Okay, well, she lived in a tinier place than Hazzard. She lived like 20 minutes outside of Hazzard in a little place called Hyden. And she, you know, you drove up this driveway, and there was her parents' house, and then one of the grandparents' houses, another one of the grandparents' houses, and then now I think her sister lives there. And it's just, it's not for everyone, but it was so wonderful to see, especially when you have intergenerational living, being able to go over and spend time with your grandparents right there, you know, and having them around when you're growing up. So I think it does exist in pockets, but it tends to be, I think it's going by the wayside. You know, it's just not it's not something that people do as much anymore, but it's really cool to see how that does still exist.
Yeah.
Let's talk about projects that we worked on together. The coolest project I would say we have done is the 8 Million Stories and Lawson Academy collaboration. I think I want to talk about your vision for the video because the concept of the video vision that you came up with is really, really dope. I think the execution with Sharo and Marvin, their twist on it came out really dope. And then Casey kind of gluing off all the pieces together in the final edit, I think came out amazing.
Should we break it down for the audience who doesn't know? You know? Okay, so we have these two really amazing storied educational institutions in Houston. We have the Lawson Academy, right, which is a charter middle school that has been serving students in the 3rd Ward since
60s?
Yeah.
50s?
70s? It's been a long time. And they have a really tied history with the civil rights movement as well. And then there's 8 Million Stories, which is this incredible nonprofit in Houston that is working with youth that would not have the opportunities normally to really get to where they need to be. And they provide them with resources, mentoring, GED classes, support to actually get gainfully employed. And these two entities wanted to intertwine and be able to support one another to grow their mission. Brought you in as the glue to make that happen.
Well, I found them. I mean, it's just such a, when you start working in the community and you look at the youth, we work with populations that have significant gaps to close. And credit recovery is one where, you know, you dropped out of high school, good luck getting back on track. It's very difficult. and middle school as well. It's a moment of crisis right now for a lot of youth around identity and purpose, and is college really right for me? And so when you look at both of those groups and you think about where can we start to paint a different vision of the future in its early childhood. When you start working with babies and young children, then there's preventative work taking place so they don't end up in a place of crisis when they're in their teen years or as young adults. And so, this desire to align from birth all the way through, I don't want to say career, but college and career or whatever life choices there are for individuals, to me, it's the place to serve and the place to work and to bring together experts in those individual segments to do great work. And so the Lawson Academy has done a phenomenal job, just an exceptional job building a strong, purposeful young men and women. They have
It's all about character, right? It's very much about establishing that character, that responsibility of self and respect for oneself.
And the way that even the students talks about the teachers, the programs, is phenomenal.
And it ends at 8th grade, right? So they're 13, 14, say goodbye. And that the work doesn't end there. And so really the desire from community preschools to be that support system early on to connect into the middle school, to connect into the high school, and in the communities that we're serving, to be able to offer the whole package, the whole thing. And not to be different systems, not to be different services, but have a one-stop shop where families like mine, we have multiple kids in different age groups, be able to get services for all of them.
Yeah, that consistent theme all the way through. We're going to support you. We're going to give you those opportunities to succeed through the most formative years of your life.
Yeah.
But you have these two totally disparate organizations that until now have had nothing to do with one another. And the challenge was, how do we present this to the world? How do we present this to Houston that, hey, this is coming, we're going to be working together? And that's where we came up with this idea. Well, you actually came up with this idea. Very much.
The first script.
For how do you, because weaving narratives together and weaving stories together can be tricky. So walk us through what you wanted for that video.
What's your vision? What was the vision you had before the final conclusion?
Well, I love to take credit, but my brain just kind of works at night coming up with stories. But I think there's a unifying theme in the purpose and the mission behind both organizations. They stand for the same things. And so I think the complicated part was weaving in the story of the Lawson Academy to talk about the legacy and the future of, as we come together as three organizations to do this work. And so we've got an exceptional, it's like I talked about my parents. Cheryl's father was an exceptional man that led an amazing movement in Houston to eliminate these imaginary lines between races and people that are unnecessary. And he did such an exceptional job back in the civil rights movement that became a school. And that is the DNA of what we hope to see for every young man in our communities.
Growing up, I watched as a little church called Wheeler Avenue Baptist Church became a centerpiece in our community. I saw how families were changed because this man of principle helped them when they needed help. That man was William Lawson. And what he became in a small town in Texas called Houston was a leader who took the message of Martin Luther King and changed Houston. He had a wife. She had a concern. She wanted to make sure that we could create more men like Bill Lawson, men who reached down to help those below him, men who were concerned about not just blacks or Baptists, but all. And so they created a school to help teach character, academics, and to develop young men. Every school aims to make a difference. And we, as educators, are committed to not just making a difference, but being the difference. Innovation in every classroom, technology for every instructional content, high quality teachers and administrators, the kind of place where when you go there, you feel enveloped in academics and in excellence. We're delighted because what started in the mind of a man and his wife has become the Lawson Academy, an A-rated charter school here in Houston. And today, we are partnered with the finest program we could find to be able to make even greater impact.
Today, we are proud to announce that the Lawson Academy and 8 Million Stories are coming together to launch a community school, an innovative model that focuses on the whole child and also demonstrates that learning is a lifelong skill, both in and out of the classroom.
We are excited because we need leaders and we need legacy, because we want to follow in the footsteps, just like he followed in the footsteps of King. We want to follow in the footsteps of people that are truly here to make a difference. We invite your child to become part of a community school that is social justice
And real-world learning infused, technology-centered, and truly unlocks each student's natural-born genius. Welcome to the Lawson Academy, powered by 8 Million Stories. See you soon.
That's what the Lawson Academy stood for. And then Marvin's, he's just so gifted at being able to draw out the gifting of every individual, every young person, that I think it's a unique gift that not everybody has.
No, helping someone realize their own potential is so powerful.
And using language to name their strengths and areas of where there's not a strength. And how, working through how do we build in these additional skills that you need in order to keep a job, in order to go into the workforce, in order to really exploit the gifts that you've received to do good. And Marvin is just so gifted at drawing that out, getting students excited about going to school, being consistent with showing up to the programs, connecting with different industries. And he's so innovative that I just, there had to be a way to bring all of us together and share on this mission and this journey.
Jose, I want you to break down the shoot day. Break down how you from a videography perspective were able to tell those stories.
So I can't remember if it was whose idea it was to use the black backdrop, but I think it was phenomenal.
I think it was yours because you said we were talking about different scenes and where we could be, and you had mentioned something. Maybe we could get a classroom or something with like that darker background. We're like, wait, we have the studio right here,
Well, that came from I know I wanted to do something like that because of the F1 series in Netflix. I was a big fan. I think I shared it with Casey, and when they came in, we set up the chairs, and they were kind of getting the light properly, right? But it was very, very smooth. Like, me and Casey showed up around 7 o'clock. We set up everything up. By 8 o'clock, everybody was here. Marvin came in, and he just spoke. We gave him the script at first. He can't do scripts. Like, he had to be organic and natural. Casey coached him through, like, the conversation, and he flew. It was, like, awesome take. Then Cheryl came in, and she's a powerful speaker. I think I called you right after. And I was like, I'm
Both
shocked.
of those people are incredibly powerful. Like, you sit in a room with them and you're like, whoa, wow.
And it was honestly like when she was speaking, it was like she was giving a sermon, but it was like an empathical sermon, like motivational, and then the history element to it. It was a really, really cool show. I think we scheduled 3 or 4 hours and we finished within an hour. Like, they came in, they came out. And then at the end, they came up with a cool concept to sit together and kind of like do the final take. And then Casey and Cheryl talked a little bit about some of the B-roll and some of the footage they had. Some of those pictures, it's amazing, the story. And so you see Dr. Martin Luther King, you see Dr. Lawson, some of the pictures, really, really cool. But the shoot went phenomenal. I think Casey did a phenomenal job weaving the story with Cheryl. So they communicate back and forth to really put everything to glue together, the story. And I'm honestly, was the first cut, we sent it, and I think we only had one change. I was like, we almost nailed it in the first thing.
Yeah, that never happened, so that's pretty awesome.
So I think it was one of those projects you just sit back and you're like, wow, we actually accomplished this. And then the time frame, Jaciel, my man, he
super tight.
What, 72 hours?
Yeah, it was like 3 days, like three business days to actually get everything accomplished,
including the weekend for you all. Friday and Sunday.
But we're so mission aligned, impact aligned with the work that you all are doing, that it just felt like a no-brainer to be a part of telling this story.
Honestly, after that project, I sat back and I think I was talking to Emma, but I sat back and I'm like, I resonate so much with 8 Million Stories and their mission. I was like, I just want to volunteer. So I think I talked to Marvin and I was like, hey, how can I help? Like, I know you guys are taking volunteers. Can I volunteer a couple of hours? Like, what does that look like? And now we're helping them out a little bit with some free volunteer work to kind of like
exciting,
to move them forward, because I think it's one of those projects that you sit and you actually, after it's completing, you actually look at the visuals and you're like, my team accomplished this in a crazy amount of time. But at the same time, it's like, it's not about the team. It's like the messaging behind it is so impactful.
Yeah.
And what is that impact going to lead to? How many more kids are going to have their lives completely transformed because they have the opportunity to get told that they deserve to be here, that they have something that is so worthwhile inside of themselves that they can believe in themselves. So.
I mean, that's just the beauty of doing life with people that speak from the heart. You can't help but put your gifts at the service of those that are seeking to make an impact in their community, and that's what community is. It truly is. How do I use my gift to do good and to care for others and to support and to be a part of the story that, I don't know, I just can't get enough of being around people like that. It gets me up every morning. It gets me through the tough days, and to be reminded that this is something we do together. You know, it's not doesn't lean on one person. It's not one person's job to get it all together, or even my job to carry the burden. This is what we do together.
Best closing ever. Let's cap this conversation. It's like the best closing.
Thank you so much for coming in our studio today. This has been long awaited. From the moment you sat down and we had the very first conversation, I mean, it was just like, yep, this is a perfect alignment. So,
which was in this room, I think, right?
Yeah, it was in this room. It was in these chairs. So we've come a long way, and we're really excited for where we have yet to go. And for everyone out there, please like, subscribe. If you're not following along, you're going to miss out on other incredible conversations like this one. We're just getting started. Thanks.
Bye.